I was elected, right, to make decisions, and that bill was asking me to make a decision about whether or not I would promote an LGBTQ identity that conflicted with my Christian beliefs.
Queer people are under attack! What do we do? Stand up, fight back! Tonight is not about dismissing the Christianity as universally toxic, but about validating the experience of those at the hands of bigots who have cowardly hid behind religion to justify their actions.
I am ashamed of y'all sitting here who have not denounced her.
And because I was a Christian on student government representing a Christian community on campus, I abstained from voting on that bill and faced a lot of attack and harassment for it.
I'm fighting to defeat the narrative.
I am a warrior for truth.
I am fighting for intellectual diversity.
I'm proud to be an American.
Together, we're on the front lines for PragerU. Welcome to On the Front Lines. I'm Isabel Brown, and today I'm at the University of California, Berkeley, and I'm joined by Isabella Chow. If people haven't heard about your story, Isabella, tell us what happened and just walk us through what that experience was like.
Yeah, so in April 2018, I was elected as a senator at UC Berkeley, and I ran explicitly on a Christian platform. In November of 2018, there was a piece of legislation that came before our student government. It was completely symbolic. It opposed Trump's proposals to Title IX, which governs how sexual assault cases are handled on campuses. And there's one very specific clause in Title IX that would define a person's gender as a person's biological sex. So in other words, if you are transgender, when you bring a Title IX case, or if you're tried for a Title IX case, you can't identify as your transgender, but you have to identify as your biological sex. And so our student government drafted a bill that opposed that clause. And I agreed with certain parts of the bill. I agreed that, transgender people and all people should be free from discrimination and free from harassment. But I couldn't agree to some parts of the bill that asked me to essentially promote an LGBTQ identity that conflicted with my Christian beliefs. And I said, I can't, but I understand what you were trying to say. And so instead of fully opposing, I decided to abstain.
So after you abstained, I read that there were over 100 people that came to Senate the next week that had a lot of comments to say directly to you. You were labeled as anti-LGBT, as homophobic, as transphobic. What was that like to see 100 people stand before you and say lies about you?
It was really hard. I think in the moment, I was just really, really overwhelmed. I just turned off my emotions and put on a poker face because I was like, I don't want to do either of these things. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, It was hard because a lot of things that I said were taken completely out of context. And in my statement, I said, essentially, I love you, God loves you, and to me, I can accept you unconditionally for who you are without promoting certain parts of how you choose to identify yourself.
I think that narrative is so commonly spread on college campuses that Christian students or conservative students have this really hateful agenda, and that everything you say is full of division and full of hate. But what's ironic is that it's usually the far left that's dividing students, and it was that narrative that you were so hateful that caused all of those students to show up at your student government meeting in the first place. Did you ever feel directly threatened here on campus because of that, or online maybe?
My immediate concern was my safety and my ability to attend classes and take the midterm I had the day after the protest, right? I made sure to walk with friends, even to classes. I made sure to, my roommates had my location on constantly. So I did take precautions, and thankfully I was never physically threatened, but that's the nature of politics,
What was the outpouring of support like on this campus from the conservative community, if there was one?
Yeah. What surprises a lot of people is how sizable the Christian community is. There are a lot of Christians on campus, and there are, conservatives on campus as well. So I was very, very thankful to have brothers and sisters who are, standing by my side, who are texting me encouragement. When I walk on campus, when I go to student government, when I go to classes, I'm just reminded of the people who hate me and the people who don't think that I should be allowed to be a student on this campus, and much less a senator. Yeah. Of course, there are students, even Christians, who disagreed.
Right. Well, that's the nature of what it should be like on a college campus, you know? Like, this is the battleground for intellectual ideas. You should be able to debate things. And I find it really ironic that the birth of the free speech movement was right here at UC Berkeley, and now they're shutting down free speech like we saw with your case in student government. What do you wish more students would know about you and about free speech and just using your individual identity on this campus?
I think it's easy to forget that we are not just debating people, but the people we debate are people, right? And I wish that more people saw me as a fellow student, not as a name on social media that, really was just a picture that got circulated everywhere. I wish people saw me beyond the memes that were being made on our student page and tried to understand where I was coming from. I said, I represent the Christian community, and what the Christian community wants is dialogue. We don't want to be shut away. We don't want to be misunderstood, and we don't want to misunderstand you either. And the only way that we can allow for true freedom of speech is a two-way dialogue.
When I watched the videos of the protests that happened in student government, there was a big sign in the back that said, "Senator Chow, resign now." What did that feel like?
I didn't see the banner until after, but essentially every student that went up, except for a few, was saying, you need to resign, you need to resign. This is not representative of our campus community. This is not acceptable in student government. So yeah, I made the decision not to resign because I asked myself, was I called to serve during the easy times only? Or was I also called to represent the Christian community even when it was hard?
You are the living embodiment of what one person can do in a big community. You told me that there's 40 or so thousand students here at Berkeley, and I believe you were the only one who abstained from the legislation that you did, which caused all of the controversy. I think the value for objective truth on campuses is starting to be diminished, but you're sort of bringing that back, and that's one of the reasons that I fell in love with your story, because there's not many young people who are willing to do that. But what do you believe the value of objective truth to be for our generation and on a college campus?
The biggest value, in my opinion, is logical cohesiveness. Because if A is A and A is not B, and somebody else says A is B, right? One of you's gotta be right and one of you's gotta be wrong. You can and you should debate about it as long as you want to. And you can have different conclusions, but to a certain extent, there has to be a recognition that objective truth has to exist. Otherwise, the pursuit of truth is meaningless. And whoever's not right has to be wrong, right? So, I'm not going to force my beliefs on you, but I should be able to share my beliefs, especially in a nice way. Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway that we can take from your story and try to inspire other people moving forward is how to be that solid rock against the waves of leftist narrative and propagation of just lies about who you are and what you believe in. If you could tell students how to stand up strong by yourself against that narrative, what would you say?
Find community. I think that's the most important thing. If it hadn't been for my church fellowship, it hadn't been for, the wider Christian community, and also, the support of conservative students on campus, I wouldn't have been able to make it. Community isn't something that you can find in a time of crisis. You find it before the time of crisis, and then you grow stronger together in the time of crisis. I'm Isabella Chow, and I'm on the front lines for PragerU.
To be featured in On the Front Lines, email us your story to info@pragerforce.com.
Thank you for watching this video. To help keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.